Nico stepped off the shuttle and onto the gleaming surface of the Arendor space station. The station floated like a silver jewel above the blue and green swirls of a distant planet. It was massive, larger than any human city, with sleek towers, glowing panels, and long walkways that seemed to stretch into the stars. Nico felt a mixture of awe and nervousness. This was the first time he had ever visited a station entirely run by alien species. He adjusted his backpack and glanced around. Aliens of many shapes and sizes moved gracefully through the corridors. Some had wings, others long tails, and a few seemed almost transparent, like liquid light. They moved with purpose, each one focused on their tasks. Nico tried to keep his composure, but he couldn't stop staring. Everything here was unlike anything on Earth. He had come to Arendor as a human observer. His job was simple: study alien technology, gather data, and share his findings with his team back home. It sounded easy in theory, but Nico quickly realized it would not be. Alien society was complex. Every species had its own rules, gestures, and ways of communicating. A small mistake could lead to confusion, or worse, offense. As Nico walked toward the research wing, he noticed a figure moving with quiet elegance ahead of him. She was taller than most aliens, with luminous skin that shimmered like silver in the station lights. Her hair floated around her head as if underwater, and her eyes were sharp, observing everything with calm confidence. Nico felt his heartbeat quicken. He had heard of her before. Her name was Vera, one of the most brilliant researchers on Arendor. She was famous for her work in interstellar energy systems, and also for being, well, extremely arrogant. Vera glanced briefly at Nico, her eyes flicking over him with polite dismissal. Then she continued down the corridor without a word. Nico's stomach tightened. She had ignored him completely, but the way she moved, calm, precise, and self-assured, made it clear she expected everyone to notice her. Nico realized he would have to get used to this. On Arendor, brilliance often came with arrogance. He followed a little behind, trying to appear casual. Nico had read reports about Vera, how she avoided unnecessary conversation, how she disliked interruptions, and how she could solve problems that left entire teams stumped. Now that he was here, he understood why people gave her space. She had a presence that demanded attention without even trying. Nico reached the lab area, a large room filled with glowing consoles and floating holograms. Screens displayed rotating, models of alien devices, and small drones zipped around, assisting the researchers. He set down his bag and looked for a workstation. Every desk was already occupied by aliens typing or manipulating holograms with skill and speed that made Nico feel slow. He chose a small station near the window where he could observe both the lab and the stars beyond. He began unpacking his equipment, checking calibration tools and writing in his notebook. He wanted to make a good impression. Today, he thought, I have to survive this day without embarrassing myself. Hours passed. Nico focused on his tasks, but he couldn't ignore the occasional glance at Vera. She worked across the room, moving between holograms and devices with fluid motion. Every gesture was controlled and confident. Nico felt intimidated, but also curious. There was something magnetic about her, something that made it hard to look away. At lunchtime, Nico hesitated to approach the cafeteria. Aliens ate in groups, some with multiple limbs, others with unusual gestures he could not understand. He sat alone at a small table, unsure if anyone would welcome him. Across the room, Vera passed by, carrying a tray of food. She barely glanced at him, and Nico felt a sting of embarrassment. He wondered if she even noticed he existed. Yet, something strange happened. As Vera walked past, Nico noticed a small device fall from her tray. He hesitated, then picked it up. It was an intricate tool unlike anything he had ever seen. He returned it to her, calling out in his softest voice. Vera stopped and turned slowly. For a brief moment, her expression softened. She took the device without a word and continued walking. Nico's hands trembled slightly. That had been the closest interaction so far. The afternoon brought a series of small tasks. Nico examined alien machinery, took readings, and tried to match his understanding to the complex instructions written in multiple alien languages. Every so often, he felt a shadow move nearby. Whenever he looked, Vera was gone. He could not tell if she was avoiding him or simply focused on her own work. Despite her aloofness, Nico began to notice subtle signs of attention. A tool he had struggled with earlier was neatly adjusted when he returned to his station. A holographic panel displayed data he had not entered. Someone had helped him, but he could not see who. The realization made him uneasy, but also curious. By evening, the lab grew quiet. Most researchers had left or retreated to their quarters. Nico stayed behind, determined to finish his work. Vera appeared once more, moving gracefully to a console nearby. She glanced at him, and for a moment, Nico thought she might speak. But she only tilted her head slightly, then returned to her tasks. Nico sat back and breathed deeply. Today had been exhausting. He had faced complex alien technology, navigated an unfamiliar environment, and survived the subtle tension created by Vera's presence. Yet, he could not shake the feeling that the day had only just begun. As he packed his notebook, he noticed a small holographic note flicker onto his screen. It was in alien script, but the meaning was simple: encouragement. Someone had left him a subtle message of support. Nico's heart raced. Could it be her? Vera, the elegant, arrogant alien, was somehow paying attention to him? He shook his head, unsure what to think. Whatever the answer, one thing was certain. This day on Arendor had changed everything. Nico realized that surviving here would require more than skill. It would require courage, observation, and perhaps the ability to understand beings very different from himself. The next morning, Nico woke to the soft hum of the station. Light filtered through the observation windows, painting the corridors in pale blue. Today, he would continue his work on Arendor, and he could not shake the events of yesterday. The subtle holographic note, the small adjustments to his tools, and Vera's distant glance lingered in his mind. Who was she, really? He took a deep breath, determined to focus. The lab was quieter than usual, giving him space to move around without bumping into dozens of alien researchers. He passed the rows of consoles and drones, observing the elegant efficiency of the station. Even without direct interaction, the presence of so many advanced species made him feel small. Yet there was excitement, too. This was a chance to learn in ways impossible back on Earth. Nico approached a new workstation where a device hummed with faint energy. He had studied its design in theory, but seeing it in person was different. It was complex, a tangle of glowing wires, floating panels, and moving parts that reacted to the touch of skilled hands. He took careful notes, adjusting sensors and running minor tests. The device seemed to respond to him slowly, almost cautiously, as if testing his skill. A sudden movement made him glance up. Vera had entered the lab. She moved with that same quiet elegance, her eyes scanning the room. When she saw Nico, she paused. For a moment, it seemed like she might walk over and speak. But instead, she turned slightly and walked past, leaving him feeling both relief and disappointment. Nico shook his head. He was not here for personal attention. He reminded himself that he had a job to do. Still, he could not deny the curiosity that pulled him toward her. She had been watching him yesterday, and he felt certain of it. But why? Was it admiration or something else entirely? He returned to the device, attempting to stay focused. Yet his mind wandered as he noticed how gracefully Vera worked. Every movement seemed effortless, precise, and intentional. Her fingers danced over panels, her eyes tracked the flow of energy, and even the slight tilt of her head expressed confidence. Nico realized he had never seen anyone, human or alien, move like that. Hours passed. Nico adjusted wires, ran energy, tests, and carefully documented each observation. Vera occasionally glanced in his direction, though she always avoided direct contact. Her presence was like a shadow, sometimes close, sometimes distant, but always noticeable. Nico tried to ignore it, but he could feel her attention, subtle but unmistakable. During a break, Nico walked to the observation deck. He looked out at the planet below, watching clouds swirl and storms drift across its surface. The sight was beautiful, and for a moment he felt a sense of peace. Then he heard a soft voice behind him. "Your calculations are interesting." Nico turned quickly. Vera stood a few steps away, her posture straight, her expression neutral. Her voice was calm, measured, and slightly amused. Nico's heart skipped a beat. She had spoken to him directly, finally. Thank you," Nico replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am still learning." Vera tilted her head, studying him. "Learning is different from understanding," she said. "Many make the mistake of confusing the two. You, however, show careful thought." Nico felt a surge of pride. Praise from Vera was rare. Even a small acknowledgement meant more than any recognition he had received before. "I try my best," he said humbly. She looked away, scanning the stars beyond the observation deck. For a moment she seemed distant again. Then she spoke quietly, almost to herself. "Few humans reach this level of focus. Most are easily distracted." Nico was not sure if she had meant him specifically, but he felt encouraged. "I am honored that you noticed," he said, feeling a blush rise in his cheeks. Vera gave a small nod and returned to the lab. Nico watched her leave, a mixture of excitement and confusion swirling inside him. She had spoken, even if only briefly. She had acknowledged his work. It was more than he had expected. Back in the lab, Nico tried to concentrate on his project. Yet subtle signs continued to appear. A panel adjusted itself in his favor. A note in alien script appeared on his console, giving a hint he needed for a calculation. He began to piece together a thought. Vera was helping him, but carefully, without drawing attention. He moved through the lab with renewed energy, testing new ideas and adjusting equipment. Each time he faced a challenge, a small, seemingly accidental assistance made the solution possible. Nico realized that someone with incredible skill and intelligence was guiding him. The thought was thrilling. He wanted to know who it was, but at the same time, he felt a strange respect for the anonymity. By late afternoon, the lab grew busier again as more researchers returned. Nico kept working, observing, and documenting. Every so often, he would catch a glimpse of Vera, always nearby, yet never interfering directly. Her presence was like a quiet force, shaping the environment without being obvious. As the day ended, Nico packed his notes and devices. He felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Today had been a test of his skill, patience, and attention. He had survived the subtle challenges of the lab and had begun to understand the quiet influence of someone powerful and intelligent. On his way back to the living quarters, Nico noticed a small, folded piece of paper on the floor. He picked it up and found a short message in alien script. Using what he had learned yesterday, he translated it. "You are capable. Keep observing." A smile spread across his face. The message confirmed what he had begun to suspect. Someone admired his work and wanted him to succeed. And deep down, he knew it was Vera. Nico's heart felt lighter, and yet his mind raced with questions. Why had she been avoiding him publicly? Why had she chosen to help quietly? And most importantly, what would happen when they finally interacted directly, as he settled into his quarters? Nico looked out at the station and the stars beyond. Arendor was vast, strange, and full of wonders. And somewhere in this station, the elegant, arrogant alien had been watching him, testing him, and encouraging him all along. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Nico felt ready. He knew that learning, observing, and understanding would be more important than ever. And perhaps, just perhaps, he might finally earn a direct conversation with Vera, one that could change everything. The next day, Nico arrived at the lab feeling a mixture of anticipation and curiosity. The events of the previous day had left him unsettled in the best possible way. Vera's brief words, her subtle assistance, and the mysterious notes had created a puzzle he was eager to solve. Today, he was determined to pay closer attention, hoping to understand her motives. The lab was alive with activity as usual. Researchers moved between consoles, holograms floated above tables, and drones zipped through the air, carrying tools or small devices. Nico's eyes scanned the room, noting where everyone was and what they were doing. He had learned to watch the flow of the lab carefully. Each alien had patterns, habits, and techniques that revealed a lot about their skill and personality. Vera entered silently, as though the air itself parted for her. Her movements were precise, measured, and impossible to ignore. She glanced at Nico, and he met her gaze for a fleeting second. Then she turned away and went to her station. Despite the minimal interaction, Nico felt her presence weigh heavily on him. She had a way of commanding attention even when she ignored people, and he was becoming increasingly aware of it. As Nico began his work on a new energy device, he noticed something unusual. A panel he had struggled with yesterday had been subtly adjusted. The components were aligned perfectly, as though someone had anticipated his actions. He paused, studying it carefully. It was not a mistake. Someone had intentionally arranged the device to make his work easier. He glanced around the lab, trying to spot who could have done it. His eyes fell on Vera, who was observing a holographic screen nearby. She seemed focused on her own project, but he could not shake the feeling that she had been there moments ago. He dismissed it as coincidence at first, but the thought nagged at him. Throughout the morning, similar incidents occurred. Tools he needed appeared nearby without explanation. Calculations on his console had subtle corrections that guided him in the right direction. Nico began to realize that he was not working alone, even if the helper remained invisible. Someone intelligent and skilled was silently guiding him. During a brief break, Nico stepped onto the observation deck. The planet below was alive with swirling clouds and deep blue oceans. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. The silence of the deck contrasted with the activity inside the lab, giving him a rare moment of peace. He almost didn't notice the soft sound behind him, a faint rustle like clothing moving in zero gravity. He turned slowly and saw Vera standing at the edge of the deck, watching him. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes were alert. Nico felt a mixture of surprise and nervousness. "You spend a lot of time observing?" she said quietly. Her voice was calm, measured, yet carried an edge of curiosity. Nico nodded, unsure how to respond. "I want to understand. Everything here is so different from Earth." Vera's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Understanding requires more than seeing. You must notice what is not obvious." He frowned, trying to understand her meaning. She gestured toward the planet below. "Patterns exist everywhere. In clouds, in energy flows, in people. Learn to see them, and you will learn more than anyone expects." Nico took her words seriously, though they confused him. There was wisdom in them, and he could sense that she was testing him, guiding him, without directly interfering. He wanted to ask more questions, but Veyra's attention shifted elsewhere. She moved toward the lab, leaving him to process her words. Back inside, Nico returned to his device. He worked more carefully, noticing details he might have missed before. Each adjustment, each calculation, brought him closer to understanding the device's function, and each time he looked up, Veyra seemed to be nearby, watching, but never intervening openly. By midday, Nico was starting to piece together a theory. The subtle help, the precise adjustments, the timing of small notes, it all pointed to one person. It had to be Veyra. But why? Why was she assisting him in secret? He couldn't imagine her motives. He continued his work, testing energy flows and adjusting components. Occasionally, he would glance at her station, and she would be observing some other project, her face composed and unreadable. Yet, he felt the connection, the invisible thread linking her attention to his work. The feeling was exhilarating and nerve-wracking at the same time. A sudden alarm rang through the lab, signaling a minor energy fluctuation in the station's systems. Nico rushed to check the readings, trying to stabilize the energy flow. His hands moved quickly, following the calculations he had memorized. But the fluctuation was stronger than expected, and he hesitated, unsure of the next step. Then, a small note appeared on his console. It was brief, written in the same alien script as before. Using his growing understanding, Nico translated it. Adjust the flow to the left node. You will succeed. He paused, astonished. The advice was perfect, precise, exactly what he needed to fix the problem. He followed the instructions carefully, and the energy stabilized. A wave of relief washed over him. Someone had been watching, helping, and guiding him. And now he was sure it was Veyra. For a moment, he considered finding her and thanking her directly. But something stopped him. She had chosen to remain hidden, to influence without recognition. He respected that. Perhaps part of her method was to allow him to succeed on his own, while providing subtle guidance. He did not want to break that unspoken agreement. The afternoon passed with similar patterns. Nico worked diligently, noticing the quiet interventions. That kept him on track. Veyra remained elegant and distant, her presence constant but indirect. Nico realized that admiration could exist without words, and that respect could be shown in actions rather than speech. As the workday ended, Nico packed his notes and devices. He felt tired, but also exhilarated. The challenges had been difficult, but he had overcome them with skill and guidance. He had learned more in one day than he could have imagined, and he had begun to understand Veyra, not fully, but enough to sense her intelligence, her pride, and her subtle admiration. Before leaving the lab, Nico glanced back at Veyra's station. She looked up briefly, as if acknowledging him silently. Then she returned to her work, maintaining the same elegance and aloofness she had shown all day. Nico smiled to himself. The day had been a puzzle, a test, and a lesson. And he knew that the unseen observer, the elegant and brilliant Veyra, had made it all possible. As he walked back to his quarters, Nico's thoughts were full of questions, curiosity, and anticipation. Tomorrow promised new challenges, new lessons, and perhaps a deeper understanding of the alien who had been guiding him from the shadows. He realized that learning here required not just knowledge, but observation, patience, and the willingness to see beyond the obvious. The morning began quietly on Arendor. Nico entered the lab, feeling more confident than before. He had learned to anticipate the subtle help that seemed to follow him, and he had begun to understand the rhythm of the station. Today, however, an unexpected announcement came over the intercom. All research teams, please report to the Central Energy Hub immediately. There is a system fluctuation that requires urgent attention. Nico's heart raced. The Energy Hub controlled power distribution across the station. A failure could affect life support, lighting, and even communication with orbiting satellites. This was no minor task. It was a test of skill under pressure. He moved quickly through the corridors, following the crowd of alien researchers. Vera was already at the hub, standing slightly apart from the others, observing the situation. Her posture was calm and composed, as if she had predicted this event. Nico felt a mixture of admiration and nervousness. He had never seen her respond to a crisis so smoothly. The lead coordinator, an alien with 3 arms and translucent skin, explained the problem. A core energy conduit had begun fluctuating unpredictably, and if left unchecked, it could overload the main system. Teams were assigned to stabilize the conduits. Nico was placed in a small group with 2 other researchers. He noticed that Vera was overseeing operations, but not directly assigned to any task. Focus on the left conduit, the coordinator said. Follow the readings and adjust the flow carefully. The core is sensitive. One wrong move could worsen the situation. Nico nodded, checking his instruments. The energy readings were unstable, jumping rapidly between safe and critical levels. He could feel the tension in the hub, the awareness that every move mattered. As he prepared to adjust a valve, he noticed a small indicator light blink in a pattern he hadn't seen before. Following the blink, he realigned a minor control setting. The energy level stabilized slightly. He looked around, surprised. The adjustment had worked perfectly. Someone had left guidance, subtle and precise, just enough to show the correct path without interfering with his work. He glanced at Vera. She was watching the hub screens, her expression unreadable. Her presence was reassuring yet intimidating. Nico realized that she had likely noticed the indicator light first, but chose not to intervene directly. Her confidence inspired him, even though he had not yet spoken to her about it. Hours passed as the team worked. Nico adjusted conduits, analyzed energy readings, and coordinated with his colleagues. The fluctuations were unpredictable, and each success brought relief, while each mistake caused tension. Through it all, subtle hints continued to guide him. A panel left slightly rotated, a display showing just enough data, or a minor correction in a holographic formula. Nico's mind raced. The subtle help was consistent, intelligent, and precise. He was beginning to understand that someone was testing him, assisting him, and trusting him to succeed. The realization filled him with a mix of excitement and respect. He felt as though he was part of a silent partnership with the unknown helper. Midway through the challenge, a sudden surge caused the left conduit to spike dangerously. Nico froze, unsure of the next step. The energy could surge beyond safe limits if he moved too quickly, but hesitation might allow the system to fail. Then, a small note appeared on his console. It was brief, just a few alien symbols. Using what? He had learned, Nico translated it. Use the secondary flow adjustment. Redirect carefully. His hands moved quickly, following the guidance. The energy spike stabilized and the conduit returned to normal function. Relief washed over him. Someone had been there, unseen, helping him prevent a disaster. He was more certain than ever that it was Vera, though she continued to work at her station without acknowledging him. As the crisis continued, Nico and Vera began to interact indirectly. He would adjust a control, and the system would respond with a slight nudge that confirmed he was correct. If he hesitated, the subtle hints guided him. It was as though she was a shadow mentor, invisible but present, letting him act while ensuring he succeeded. By late afternoon, the major fluctuation had been stabilized. The energy hub returned to normal operation. The coordinator praised the teams for their work, emphasizing that teamwork, observation, and skill had prevented a critical failure. Nico felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not only for his own efforts, but for the unseen guidance that had made success possible. Vera approached him quietly after the announcement. Her usual aloofness softened slightly. "You handled the conduits well," she said, her tone calm but carrying weight. "Your adjustments were precise and your timing was excellent." Nico felt a rush of pride and surprise. She had spoken directly to him for the first time since yesterday. "Thank you," he said. I had some help, I think." Vera's eyes glimmered faintly. She tilted her head, a small smile forming. "Perhaps, but you still made the decisions. Observing is easy. Acting correctly under pressure is not. You succeeded because you combined knowledge with instinct." Nico nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and curiosity. I want to understand how you knew the right adjustments to guide me." Vera paused, considering the question. "Experience, observation, and recognizing potential. Not everyone can follow subtle guidance without hesitation. You can. That is rare." The words filled Nico with a sense of achievement and validation. For the first time, he realized that Vera's aloofness was not disdain, but confidence. She valued skill, intelligence, and the ability to act decisively. And today, he had proven that he possessed those qualities. As the day ended, Nico packed, his notes and tools feeling more confident than ever. He had faced a real challenge, contributed meaningfully to the station's operation, and had begun to earn the recognition of the most brilliant and elegant alien he had ever met. Before leaving, he glanced at Vera. She gave a brief nod, acknowledging him silently. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it carried weight. Nico smiled. The day had been exhausting, challenging, and rewarding. He had survived not only the test of skill, but also the silent, watchful presence of Vera. Walking toward his quarters, Nico realized something important. Success on Arendor required more than knowledge or tools. It required observation, patience, and the ability to understand subtle guidance. And in that moment, he felt a growing connection with the elegant, brilliant alien who had been both his challenge and his mentor in secret. He knew that tomorrow would bring new tests, new lessons, and perhaps a deeper understanding of Vera. And deep down, he hoped that one day he might finally learn why the most arrogant, elegant alien on the station had been silently cheering for him all along. The following morning, Nico woke feeling more alert than ever. Yesterday's success at the energy hub had left a deep impression. He had survived the challenge, learned from subtle guidance, and experienced the quiet presence of Vera in action. Now, he wanted to understand more about the station, the devices, and most importantly, about the mysterious and elegant alien who had been observing him. He entered the lab early, the corridors bathed in soft, artificial light. Few researchers were present at this hour, giving him space to prepare his instruments without distraction. He carefully checked the devices he would use today, calibrating each sensor and reviewing his notes. Each step required precision, and Nico was determined to perform at his best. As he began working, he noticed something immediately. A small device he had struggled with the previous day now sat perfectly aligned on his workstation. Its components fit together seamlessly, requiring almost no adjustment. Nico paused, realizing this was no accident. Someone had carefully prepared it for him. He glanced around the lab. The room was empty except for him and Vera, who stood at her own station, observing her holographic displays. Her posture was calm and controlled, and she appeared to be focused on her own work. Yet Nico had learned by now that appearances could be misleading. He could feel the subtle influence of her presence. He started assembling the device. Each step was smoother than he expected, as though invisible hands had guided the components into place. Nico smiled to himself, feeling a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. Whoever was helping him was intelligent, precise, and patient, and he was growing more certain it was Vera. Mid-morning, Nico noticed another subtle clue. A holographic display he had programmed yesterday now included a small correction. Minor, almost unnoticeable, but enough to improve the energy flow calculations. He studied it carefully. The handwriting was alien, precise, and unfamiliar, yet he recognized the style. This was the same guidance he had received before. He felt a thrill of excitement. Vera was not only observing him, she was helping him learn, but in a way that allowed him to act independently. She trusted him to succeed on his own, providing support only where it was needed. It was a level of mentorship he had never experienced before. As he continued, he began to notice a pattern. Each clue, each small adjustment, appeared just when he needed it most. A tool left perfectly placed, a note suggesting a minor calculation, a subtle shift in a panel that made alignment easier. These interventions were not random. They were intentional, thoughtful, and precise. Nico realized he was learning not only about the devices, but also about the person guiding him. The helper valued intelligence, focus, and careful observation. They respected his ability to notice and act independently, and most importantly, they admired his skill. During a brief break, Nico stepped onto the observation deck. The planet below shimmered with sunlight, clouds moving slowly across oceans and land. He breathed deeply, letting the calmness of the view wash over him. Then he noticed a small object floating in the air nearby, a tiny drone with a message attached. Curious, he retrieved it and opened the note. The alien script read, "Your attention to detail is impressive. Observe patterns carefully, and you will learn more than you expect." Nico's heart skipped a beat. The message was unmistakable. Someone was not only helping him, but also encouraging him. He felt a growing respect and admiration for the invisible mentor who had been guiding him all along, and he was more certain than ever that it was Vera. Returning to the lab, he worked with renewed focus. Each device, each calculation, each adjustment felt like a small puzzle to solve, and with each success, he felt the quiet presence of his mentor guiding him. Nico began to anticipate the subtle interventions, learning to recognize the signs of guidance before they happened. By afternoon, a new challenge arrived. A complex energy device needed to be tested, but its calibration was delicate. One misstep could result in a malfunction. Nico prepared carefully, noting the readings and monitoring the flow. As expected, small clues appeared, panels slightly rotated, displays showing helpful adjustments, and minor notes guiding him through the process. Nico followed the guidance carefully, correcting his mistakes and adjusting his actions. Each successful step built his confidence. He felt a growing bond with the invisible mentor, a connection based on mutual respect and admiration. For the first time, he understood that learning was not just about knowledge. It was about observation, patience, and guidance. Late in the afternoon, Nico noticed another subtle clue. A holographic note appeared on his console. "You are progressing well. Trust your instincts." He smiled, feeling both reassurance and pride. The message confirmed what he had suspected all along. Vera had been observing him, guiding him, and cheering for his success in her own quiet way. The realization filled him with excitement and curiosity. As the day ended, Nico packed his tools and notes. He glanced at Vera, who was still at her station. She looked up briefly, her expression calm but unreadable. Then she returned to her work, maintaining her usual elegance and aloofness. Nico felt a mixture of admiration and respect. He had come to understand the quiet power of her guidance and the subtlety of her mentorship. He realized that Vera's aloofness was not coldness, but a sign of confidence and intelligence. She valued skill, focus, and respect, and she had recognized those qualities in him. Walking back to his quarters, Nico reflected on the day. Each clue, each subtle intervention had taught him something new. He had learned to observe more carefully, act more decisively, and trust his instincts. And he had discovered the invisible presence of a mentor who believed in him, even if she had not spoken her admiration openly. For the first time, Nico felt a connection with Vera, not just as a distant, brilliant alien, but as someone who recognized his potential and encouraged him to succeed. He knew that the next step would be to interact more directly, to learn more about her, and perhaps to understand the reason behind her admiration. As he lay down to rest, Nico felt a sense of excitement and anticipation. The days on Arendor were challenging, but they were also full of discovery, learning, and subtle connections. And somewhere, not far away, the elegant, brilliant Vera continued her work, observing him, guiding him, and quietly proud of the human who was slowly earning her respect. Tomorrow promised new challenges, new lessons, and perhaps the first direct conversation that could reveal the true depth of Vera's admiration. Nico drifted to sleep with a sense of purpose, ready for whatever the station and the brilliant alien had in store for him next. The following morning, Nico arrived at the lab with a sense of purpose. Yesterday's discoveries had changed the way he approached his work. He now understood the subtle guidance he had been receiving and was determined to notice patterns more carefully. Each adjustment, each calculation, and each observation had become a lesson, and he was eager to continue. As he prepared his instruments, he noticed a small device on his station. It was the same one he had struggled with previously, but today it seemed ready for use, components aligned perfectly and energy readings stable. Nico smiled. The invisible mentor's careful preparation was evident once again. He could feel the presence of guidance, subtle but unmistakable. Vera entered the lab shortly after, moving gracefully between stations. Her eyes briefly met his, and for the first time there was no hesitation or dismissal in her gaze. She seemed curious. Nico's heart raced. Could it be that she had chosen to observe him more directly today? As the morning progressed, Nico worked on calibrating a complex energy device. Each step required precision and attention. The system was delicate, and any mistake could lead to a cascade of errors. He followed the usual subtle clues, the slight adjustment of panels, minor corrections in holographic displays, and small notes guiding him through calculations. Midway through the task, a sudden warning flashed on his console. The energy reading surged unexpectedly, threatening to overload the device. Nico froze, unsure how to respond. He had been trained to remain calm, but the stakes felt higher than ever. Before he could act, Vera approached quietly. She did not take the controls from him, nor did she speak immediately. Instead, she observed, her posture calm, her eyes sharp and focused. Nico felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. This was the first time she had come so close while he was actively working. "You are hesitant," she said softly. Her voice was calm, yet it carried authority. "Trust your observations. The system responds to your adjustments." Nico nodded, taking a deep breath. He remembered the subtle patterns, the previous guidance, and the lessons he had learned. Slowly, he adjusted the flow, carefully redirecting energy to stabilize the device. The readings returned to normal, and relief washed over him. Vera's expression softened slightly, a small acknowledgement of his success. "Well done," she said quietly. "You did not need my intervention. You applied your knowledge and instinct perfectly." Nico felt a surge of pride and gratitude. For the first time, he realized that Vera's help had not been about doing the work for him. It had been about teaching him to observe, understand, and act independently. Her admiration was quiet, patient, and intentional. As the day continued, Nico and Vera worked in closer proximity. She observed his methods, occasionally offering brief advice or confirming his adjustments with a nod. Each interaction, though minimal, allowed him to feel her presence more clearly. He began to see her not just as an elegant, arrogant alien, but as a mentor, a guide, and someone who believed in his potential. During a short break, Nico stepped onto the observation deck. The planet below glowed in soft light, and the quiet hum of the station created a peaceful atmosphere. Vera followed, maintaining a respectful distance. For a moment, neither spoke. They watched the planet together, sharing a silence that felt comfortable rather than awkward. Finally, Vera spoke. "You notice patterns quickly," she said. "You learn from subtle guidance better than most. That is rare among humans." Nico turned to her, curious and cautious. "Do you mean that you have been guiding me?" She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "I have," she admitted. "But only when necessary. You needed direction, not control. The difference is important. I wanted to see if you could succeed while learning, observing, and applying your own judgment." Nico's eyes widened. "All the notes, the adjustments. It was you?" Vera nodded. "Yes. I observed your work yesterday and today. I intervened, only when a small push could help you grow. You have talent, Nico. I wanted to see how far it could reach." The realization left Nico speechless. He had admired her from afar, felt the tension of her presence, and now understood the depth of her subtle encouragement. It was more than guidance, it was belief. Vera continued, her voice soft but firm. "I am not easily impressed. Most cannot handle subtle instruction. Most fail when guidance is not obvious. But you notice, adapt, and succeed. That is why I have paid attention to you." Nico felt a mixture of pride, respect, and a newfound connection. He realized that her aloofness had not been disdain, but a method of observation. Her elegance and confidence had created a challenging environment, one that allowed him to grow while still respecting his independence. I did not expect that," Nico admitted. "I thought you were ignoring me." Vera's eyes softened, slightly. "Ignoring is different from observation. I do not need to speak to notice potential, and I do not need to intervene to encourage success. You prove yourself without constant guidance. That is rare and worthy of respect." Nico nodded, absorbing her words. He felt a quiet bond forming, built on trust, respect, and shared understanding. For the first time, he felt truly seen, not just as a human, but as someone capable of learning, adapting, and achieving alongside the most brilliant being on the station. As the day ended, Nico packed his instruments and notes. Vera gave him a small nod, her way of acknowledging his growth without excessive words. The subtle admiration, the guidance, and the recognition had transformed the way he viewed her and himself. Walking toward his quarters, Nico felt a deep sense of purpose. He understood that the days ahead would bring new challenges, but he also knew that he was no longer working alone. Vera's quiet mentorship had opened a door to learning, respect, and a connection that went beyond words. That night, as he reflected on the day, Nico realized something important. The most elegant, brilliant, and initially arrogant alien had become more than a mentor. She had become a silent partner in his growth, a presence that challenged him, guided him, and ultimately believed in him. And in that belief, Nico found the courage to face the days ahead with confidence, curiosity, and determination. Tomorrow would bring new lessons and perhaps new revelations. But one thing was certain. The quiet admiration, subtle guidance, and shared understanding between Nico and Vera had begun to shape something extraordinary. The human had begun to earn the respect of the alien, and in doing so, he had discovered the true meaning of learning, observation, and trust. The morning air on Arendor was calm and clear, and the station hummed with quiet activity. Nico walked through the corridors, carrying his tools and notes, feeling a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. Yesterday had changed everything. He now knew that Vera, the elegant and brilliant alien who had seemed so distant, had been observing and guiding him all along. Her subtle interventions, small notes, and careful adjustments had helped him grow, and today, he hoped, he would finally interact with her fully. When he entered the lab, he saw Vera already at her station. She moved with the same grace and precision he had come to recognize. But there was something different today. A softness in her expression, a willingness to step closer without hesitation. Nico's heart raced. "Good morning, Nico," she said calmly. Her voice was gentle, yet carried a tone of warmth he had never heard before. "Good morning, Vera," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. I want to thank you." Vera tilted her head slightly, studying him. "For what?" she asked. "For guiding me," Nico said, holding her gaze. "All the subtle clues, the adjustments, the notes. You helped me succeed without taking control. You believed in me when I didn't even fully believe in myself." Vera's eyes softened. "You noticed," she said. "That was my intention. I do not intervene unless necessary. I wanted to see what you could achieve with observation, learning, and instinct, and you exceeded expectations." Nico felt a mixture of pride and relief. "I understand now," he said. "Your guidance wasn't just about helping me succeed. It was about teaching me to notice, to act carefully, and to trust myself. You believed in me." Vera nodded. "Yes. Few humans can handle subtle instruction. Most fail without constant direction. But you observe, adapt, and succeed. That is rare, and it deserves acknowledgement." For the first time, Nico felt that their distance had been unnecessary. The barriers that had seemed so obvious, the elegance, the aloofness, the silent judgment, were not walls but a test of patience, focus, and skill. And now, those barriers were gone. As the day progressed, Vera and Nico worked together on a complex energy calibration project. This time, there were no hidden clues, no subtle notes. Every instruction, every correction was direct. They collaborated, side by side, discussing calculations, adjusting conduits, and analyzing results. Nico was amazed at her speed, intelligence, and elegance, but he no longer felt intimidated. Instead, he felt a sense of partnership, a recognition that both of them brought skill, focus, and intelligence to the task. During a particularly delicate adjustment, Nico glanced at Vera. She was watching the energy flows, her hands steady and precise. He noticed a faint smile, subtle but unmistakable, on her face. It was the first time he had seen her display such emotion. He realized it was pride. Pride in his ability, pride in his progress, and perhaps even pride in their shared success. "You have improved greatly," Vera said quietly. "Your timing, adjustments, and observation are sharper than yesterday. You are learning quickly." Nico smiled. "I learned from the best," he replied. "Your guidance, it taught me more than any manual or lecture could." She looked at him, her eyes holding a quiet intensity. "I admire your persistence, Nico. You do not give up when challenged. You notice what others overlook. That is a strength." The words struck him deeply. For so long, he had felt small among the advanced alien researchers. Now, for the first time, he felt seen, not just as a human, but as someone capable, intelligent, and worthy of respect. The project continued smoothly. Nico and Vera exchanged ideas openly, discussed solutions, and adjusted the system together. Their collaboration was seamless, built on trust and mutual understanding. Nico realized that the admiration he had felt from afar was now mutual. They were learning from each other, growing together, and forming a connection based on respect, skill, and shared experience. By late afternoon, the energy system was fully stabilized. The project had been a success, and the station's hum of activity felt lighter, almost celebratory. Nico stepped back, watching the panels glow steadily, the conduits flow smoothly, and the readings remain stable. It was a tangible sign of their combined effort. Vera turned to him, a small but genuine smile on her face. "You have proven yourself, Nico," she said softly. "Not only in skill but in understanding subtle guidance, observation, and independent thought. You have earned recognition." Nico felt a wave of gratitude and respect. "I could not have done it without you," he said. "Your guidance, patience, and trust made all the difference." Vera nodded. "And yet you acted on your own. That is why you succeeded. I only provided direction when necessary. You are capable, and you have proven it." For the first time, Nico saw Vera without distance or aloofness. The elegant, brilliant alien who had seemed arrogant and untouchable had revealed a side that was patient, supportive, and quietly proud. He felt a deep connection built on shared experience and mutual respect. As the day ended, Nico and Vera stood together on the observation deck. The planet below shimmered. In sunlight, clouds moving gracefully across oceans and land. The station hummed softly around them, and for a moment there was perfect quiet. "You are my biggest fan," Vera said softly, almost as a whisper. Her words surprised him, not because of their content, but because they revealed her true feelings. All the subtle guidance, all the interventions, and all the admiration she had shown were real. She valued him not just for his skill, but for his persistence, intelligence, and ability to grow. Nico's eyes widened, and a smile spread across his face. "And you've been my mentor," he replied. "Your guidance has taught me more than I ever imagined. I respect you, Vera, and I admire your skill and elegance." She nodded, her gaze meeting his fully. "Then we have found understanding. Mutual respect and recognition are more important than words alone. You have earned it, human." For the first time, they shared a genuine moment of connection. No hidden clues, no subtle interventions, no distance. The elegance, brilliance, and admiration that had seemed unreachable were now shared. They were equals in skill, observation, and respect, and that recognition was more meaningful than any praise. Nico felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of purpose and belonging he had never known. The journey from silent observation, subtle guidance, and hidden admiration had led to this moment of mutual recognition. He understood the value of patience, focus, and subtle learning, and he knew that this connection, with Vera, with the station, and with himself, would guide him for all the days to come. As the sun cast golden light across the observation deck, Nico and Vera stood side by side, quiet but connected, understanding that admiration, guidance, and trust could build a bond stronger than words. They had faced challenges, discovered potential, and earned each other's respect. And in that moment, the arrogant, elegant alien and the determined human shared something extraordinary, a recognition that would shape their journey together in ways neither had anticipated. The station hummed around them, steady and strong, a reflection of their shared effort and understanding. Nico smiled, feeling the warmth of achievement and the excitement of new possibilities. For the first time, he felt fully seen, fully respected, and fully connected. The journey on Arendor had reached a new beginning, one built on guidance, admiration, and the quiet, unspoken bond between a human and an extraordinary alien who had once seemed unreachable.